Medicare.
Oh, Medicare.
Medicare.
Oh, Medicare. Well, welcome everyone. It's good to be in person. For those of you who are habitually keeping your cameras off on our online meetings, you can't make obscene gestures at me this morning. And now I see that Councilwoman Stephanie Hancock is joining us. She's so dedicated. She's still here while she's about to swing hammers for Habitat for Humanity today. So we appreciate her in all her involvement and also for running the meeting last time in my absence. Thank you, Councilwoman Hancock. Approval of the minutes. Any changes?
No.
Okay, so approved.
No change.
Of the two consent items, does anyone wish to pull an item? We can advance those, but we're thankful to John and Sundberg for being ready to answer any questions. Item 3, drainage and flood control improvements on Coal Creek at Piccadilly Road, which I've seen flood before. Sam, please take it away.
Oh, a nice slow start to that camera turning on today. Good morning, everybody. Let me just share my screen here very quickly. All right. Today I have two IGAs with the Mile High Flood District to talk through with our Water Policy Committee. The first of which is the, there we go, the Coal Creek at Piccadilly Road. Like Councilmember Sundberg alluded to, there are a number of drainage issues right around Piccadilly Road. This particular IGA is focusing on the section of Coal Creek immediately east of Piccadilly, that large bend right there. So we are looking at alternatives to prevent further erosion and stream migration in this area. There are a number of regional utilities and properties that are put at risk from a large bank like this. It's difficult to tell when you take pictures from the ground exactly how high and steep something is, so I tried to give you an idea of how the water is moving, where the stream bed is, and the distance between that stream bed and the neighboring walls of that erosion here. So we're looking directly head on to where the stream bed would be coming in, and this is what we're looking at for an eroded side of the stream. Our hope is to identify a chosen solution and then under the same IGA in a further amendment move forward to constructing whatever it is that we decide upon. So this is the alignment of the stream currently. We've got some flood prone area encroaching upon neighboring development, and so the hope is to be able to move it a little bit further south so that it's better for the erosion and better for removing the hazards. At this point, the high-level conceptual investigation will include $100,000 both from the City of Aurora and Mile High Flood District to identify alternatives. That is this project. And does this Water Policy Committee support moving this forward to study session?
Thank you, Sam. Council members in support?
Yes.
Sounds like we have support, Sam. If you'd like to move
Excellent.
on. Yeah, thank you. Move on to item 4, please.
Happily. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of feedback from your side. One of those speech jammer things that's I can push through, but oh, that's better. Thank you. The next IGA I have to share with you is the Sampson Robinson Gulch detention pond. Both Sampson Gulch and Robinson Gulch have a little confluence here. This is a utility easement, not a road. It's a little difficult to get a good cross section, but we're just a little bit east of 470 and the South Aurora Parkway. The pond was constructed in 2000, and since then there was not a lot of upkeep of the maintenance access, which has become harder and harder. The pond has become overgrown and quite silted, and so we don't have the full detention capacity that was originally designed for. We've started to fill in the bottom and make that pond shallower. And this project that the IGA will fund will remove the sediment and redesign the outlet so that it's easier for our maintenance crews to get in there and service it in the future. This is what it looks like from a overhead view. It's kind of spread out, and this is what it looks like when it's full. At this time, this IGA would be asking the city of Aurora to contribute $100,000 for this effort. There was also a local maintenance project that Mile High Flood District was working on. Those funds can be reappropriated to this project, which would solve a few other problems. And so that's what this maintenance funds to be transferred is, an internal transfer from Mile High's maintenance budget to their capital budget. And so this is not additional funding requested from us at this time. It's just the 100,000 through this amendment, or I'm sorry, through this IGA. And does the Water Policy Committee support moving this item forward to study session as well?
Does anyone have any questions for Sam? Or anyone else? Yes,
No
Councilor.
questions, just comment, happy that this is being done, because my residents talk about it sometimes.
Oh, really? Okay. Great.
Been a long time coming.
Further comments or questions? Can we move this forward, council members?
Okay.
We can move it forward. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Item 5, Harmony FLG 14 reimbursement agreement, Chong. And we forgot to welcome the mayor.
Good morning.
Sir.
Can you all hear me?
My apologies, I did something here. Give us a second, Sean, I disconnected this for a second. Still learning how to use this room.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Well, my name is Chong Wu. I'm an engineering supervisor on the Utilities Development Review Team. I'm here to present the Harmony Reimbursement Agreement project. So I don't have a presentation, but I can at least share the exhibit of where it's located, if that works. So the Harmony Filing 14 project. Some feedback. Project is located. It's part of the overall Harmony development. It's generally located southeast of Powhatan and Alameda Avenue. So this reimbursement agreement will be between the City of Aurora and Melcor TC Aurora, and it's for a 36-inch water line located along Powhatan Road, approximately between Alameda and Exposition. All total about 2,600 feet in length. The total reimbursement amount will be not to exceed $1,668,331.90. This equates to the cost differential between the required 16-inch and the regional 36-inch that is needed to support the Aurora water service level needs. This cost also includes all engineering and construction and will also include a 15% contingency. The reimbursement will be paid as a lump sum once Aurora Water does accept the infrastructure. And this item was budgeted as part of the 2025 capital improvement plan budget coming out of the water fund. And that concludes my presentation. So does the committee support moving this forward to the regular council session? And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments from anyone? Councilwoman Hancock? Nothing? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilwoman Bergan, you good?
I'm good.
We're good. Thank you. Moving forward. Excellent. We are moving along quite rapidly here. Item number 6, Dominion Water and Sanitation District Agreement Summary and Sterling Ranch easements. Dawn.
And Marshall's actually going to be presenting.
Okay.
Yeah, you're stuck with me. Okay, so this one's not going to go quite as quick, likely, as the other items, but we, the City of Aurora, Aurora Water, and Dominion, the water provider for Sterling Ranch, entered into an agreement. We've entered into multiple agreements. Originally, in 2009, we entered into what's called the 230 agreement for 230 acre feet of water that Dominion traded to Aurora, and Aurora agreed to deliver out of Strontia Springs to Dominion to be used in the Sterling Ranch area. The concept of the original 230 agreement was thought to provide benefits to both Aurora and Dominion. It required that Dominion construct or build their own diversion on the South Platte to take that water eventually on their own. In 2012, we modified that agreement where the city agreed to deliver water through our Rampart system to the Roxborough treatment plant, expiring in October of 2027, at which point Dominion was required to create their own capability of taking that water, not using Aurora's Rampart delivery system. At the same time we modified the 230 agreement in 2012, there was another agreement signed with Dominion called the 570 agreement or bridge agreement. The concept with the bridge agreement was to temporarily lease 570 acre feet to Dominion as a bridge capability, enabling them to construct infrastructure to take their WISE deliveries. So Dominion is one of the largest WISE members, and they can take water out of our WISE delivery system, which is an interruptible supply system off of the Prairie Waters side of our Aurora water system. So that was viewed or again outlined as a temporary lease that expires, I get the dates mixed up sometimes.
A lot of dates.
In 2028. So then in 2013, December 2013, we entered a third agreement with Dominion called the 250 agreement. The agreements are all named based on the volume of water associated with them. So the 230 was 230 acre feet of Dominion's water temporarily delivered through Aurora's system. 570 agreement, 570 acre feet of Aurora's water temporarily leased to Dominion and delivered through our system. And then the 250 agreement is a little bit different than the other two. It's for 250 acre feet of water that Dominion acquired and conveyed to Aurora, and we agreed to permanently deliver to them, initially through the Rampart system, and then eventually through either the turnout that they were going to build off of the South Platte River, where they would take their 230 water, or through the WISE connection that they were also working on building, associated with primarily the 570 agreement. So 3 agreements, one of which was modified from its original form. After the agreements were created, Dominion has been working on agreements with other entities. I'm not privy to all those details, so I'm not going to speak to any of those. And they've also been working on building infrastructure. In addition, they've approached Aurora a few times about potentially modifying one or all of the 3 agreements we have with them in some form or fashion, but probably consistently having conversations on and off since maybe, I want to say 2018, 2019, maybe even sooner than that, about interest in potentially modifying the agreements. to take either the temporary water longer or take their water through our Rampart system for an extended period of time or potentially permanently. So we've been having those conversations on and off. They also approached us at one point about building some of their infrastructure. We had that discussion for a while, ended up not moving forward with that, but there are numerous records that are out there from exec sessions and negotiations about potentially building the pipeline that would connect connect their system to the WISE infrastructure, which they also did some deals with Castle Rock to help facilitate that. We did not execute that agreement, even though there was a draft. You can find a draft of an agreement to finance and build that pipeline. But they built that on their own. It's mostly completed. So they are requesting again the city consider some modifications to the agreements, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrea. I think we have Andrea and Brock both here, so they can speak to their request, and then I can talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons with the request.
Welcome, Andrea and Brock.
Thank you, council members. And I think I can share, right?
Yeah, should be able to.
So. Three options, one will work, right? Yay. Maybe. All right, so now thank you very much. We appreciate this opportunity to be here today and talk to you a little bit more about our request. And I appreciate you adding us to the agenda. So my name is Andrea Cole. I'm the General Manager of Dominion Water and Sanitation District. I have one of our directors here of our board, Brock Smethills, and he is also here and he can answer any questions specifically related to the pipeline, easement, etc. But I just wanted to provide some background on who Dominion is, who we provide water service to, give you a little bit more information on some of the contracts. Marshall, you did a great job trying to summarize them. Most of us weren't here when these contracts were first envisioned and negotiated and signed, and so it takes some time to kind of parse through those over and over and over again to figure out we're getting all the pieces right. So I think that's worthwhile spending a little bit of time on those contracts. And then I also have some information, detailed information by month on how much water Dominion has used for each of those specific contracts, colored. As we say in the water industry, they're colored water. We have that information as well to share, and then to talk a little bit more about the ask. So just to start out with, just to set the tone for our presentation is not Dominion's intent to permanently connect to Aurora Water's facilities. I want to make sure that is said out loud, and that is our intention, not to connect. Dominion is seeking clarity and certainty for all existing Aurora agreements, and Dominion believes that these slight modifications or updates to these existing agreements are mutually beneficial and protect both parties in the future. So just a little bit of background on Dominion. So we were formed in 2004. We're a quasi-municipal corporation and political subdivision in the state of Colorado under Title 32. Our service area is quite large, as you see on this map. We're bounded on the north by Chatfield Reservoir, to the south by Wildcat Mountain, and out to the east towards Sedalia. And you'll notice that our service area is very oddly shaped, but it was very strategically drawn. And so when Dominion was formed, we were created not only to provide wholesale water and wastewater service to the community of Sterling Ranch, but also those surrounding communities that are existing that are on Denver Basin non-sustainable, non-renewable groundwater supplies and are experiencing significant declines in those supplies, as well as water quality challenges. And so we're currently in the process of getting an agreement established with the community of Laviers, who is on a CDPHE shutdown order for radionuclides within their groundwater system. Their community has not been able to drink their water for over 3 years. We're also working with the community of Laviers to take their outdated lagoon out of service and connect them into our system to our newly to be constructed state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility. And so that just gives you a little bit of background. We're more than just there for Sterling Ranch. Our service area is for those other existing communities in our area. And then this is just a simple graphic that I've pulled together to help try to explain. Again, we're a wholesaler, so our role is to acquire and manage water rights. We develop and maintain the water transmission system, develop and maintain the wastewater conveyance system, develop and maintain treatment facilities, and then we bill our customer. Our only customer today is Sterling Ranch, but that is a retail district, and so Sterling Ranch Community Authority Board is our customer. And so right now, their role is to deliver that water to the end users, to the residents that live within Sterling Ranch, develop and maintain the water distribution system, develop and maintain the wastewater collection system, and then obviously they bill those end users, those residents that live within the community of Sterling Ranch. And then just to note for our end users, so our residents, there's approximately 2,300 existing single family equivalents that live there. Sterling Ranch is zoned for 12,050 single family equivalents. And I also want to point out that Sterling Ranch and Dominion is leading the state in water-wise efficiency. We're down to around 0.18 acre feet per single family equivalent, which is honestly leading the country in many standards. So they're really setting the stage on water use. So this map is probably hard to see because I know I can't see it from way back here, but this is just another way to look at Dominion's service area. So our boundary is in the pink, and this kind of talks about some of what Marshall was conveying. So you see on the top, I'm going to try to hold still. I'm a walker, so on the top is the east-west line. That's the part of the WISE system, the ECCB line. And then you see that pipeline that goes north-south through Parker and to Reuter Hess, and then kind of meanders its way down to Castle Rock. And so Dominion, the connection that Marshall was referring to is this 11-mile, 30-inch Eastern Regional Pipeline that is primarily completed. This also shows the additional water supplies that Dominion has acquired. We do have sufficient water supplies for the entire build-out of Sterling Ranch, as well as those commitments that we have to the existing community within our service area. And those additional water rights include junior water rights on the South Platte River. We have 500 acre feet of storage in Chatfield Reservoir. We also have firming supplies in Cherokee Ranch, so groundwater supplies that are there for drought, also to help back the interruptible nature of the WISE supplies. We have, as Marshall indicated, we're the largest subscription in the WISE partnership of 1,325 acre feet. 700 of that has been firmed through Castle Rock in a separate agreement, but we have 625 native, is what I refer to it, native water rights within the WISE system. But what's really important is Dominion is establishing a full closed loop system. And so all of our water is reusable. So we can reuse that water to extinction. And so we're working with Douglas County and have secured ARPA funding to construct a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility. It's really hard to see, but it's kind of where those two triangles are on top of each other down just south of Chatfield Reservoir. That's where our new wastewater treatment plant will be located. And that then just downstream of that facility will be the diversion structure that will not only collect the Aurora trade waters, the 230 and the 250, but also our juniors, when they're in priority, will be able to exchange our water out of Chatfield Reservoir in priority, and will also be able to capture really what is the majority of our water supply portfolio, those return flows. So the diversion structure is very, very important to Dominion for a lot of different pieces, not just the trade delivery point for the trade waters for Aurora. So just a little bit, again, more detail on this, and I won't go over everything because Marshall's already touched on a lot of these, but Dominion purchased water rights yielding approximately 250 acre feet a year of consumptive use water to trade to Aurora in return for permanent, firm, fully consumable water supply from Aurora in the amount of 230. So this is part of the 230 agreement. So just to note that this adds a net of 20 acre feet a year to the city of Aurora for water supplies. Water delivered to Dominion to date varies with a high of the 230 acre feet per year and a low of 3.3 acre feet per year. And any of that unused water is able to be used by Aurora. And a couple slides later, I have, like I mentioned, the detailed information on a monthly basis that shows which color of water we've been bringing into our system. As Marshall indicated, the original agreement was entered into in 2009. At that time was not contemplated to utilize Aurora's infrastructure, but that was amended in 2012 to modify the point of delivery to the Roxborough connection, which is the Larry Moore water treatment plant, until October 31st of 2027. And the Moore water treatment plant is jointly built and owned and operated by Roxborough Water Sanitation District as well as Dominion. It's located within Sterling Ranch. And then a South Platte location, which is a future Dominion constructed and owned diversion to be located near the existing Roxborough water treatment plant. We purchased that plant. We've renamed it to Chatfield Basin Water Reclamation Facility. Who knows, it might have a different name as we progress. But and I do want to make a point because I think this is in some of the summary information that was provided. So regardless of whether the water is conveyed through to the Roxborough connection or whether the water is released from Strontia Springs to the South Platte diversion point, that water quality remains the same. So there's not much distance between Strontia and the diversion point, and it goes through Waterton Canyon, so there's not other points in between. On the Aurora 250, the original agreement was entered into in December of 2013. Dominion, at that time, why the 250 looks so different is that at that time, Dominion did not actually have trade water for that agreement, nor was the WDA, the Water Delivery Agreement, which is the foundation of the WISE partnership, that was not fully executed. So there's a lot of other conditions and clauses included within the 250 to protect Aurora's interests should Dominion not be able to acquire those water rights to trade to Aurora. So subsequently, though, to that agreement being signed in 2013 and prior to the clauses within the 250 agreement, Dominion did purchase water with an estimated average yield of 385 acre feet per year of consumptive use water to meet its obligations for trade with Aurora in return for 250 acre feet, giving Aurora a net gain of approximately 135 acre feet per year of new water. We also entered into the water delivery agreement or the formation agreement for South Metro. The WDA was executed in 2013. We actually joined South Metro Water Supply Authority in 2012. Water delivered to Dominion to date varies from a high of 90.3 acre feet per year to a low of 0. Any unused water is able to be used by Aurora. There's 3 points of delivery contemplated in this agreement. So until Dominion has constructed the South Platte location, which is the diversion, Aurora shall deliver to the Roxborough location. And I just copied this straight out of the agreement. When the WISE delivery line is capable of transporting water, Aurora may deliver at the WISE connection. Net of system losses, meaning Aurora will have to deliver more than 250 acre feet. When the South Platte location is capable of diverting water, Dominion may elect to have deliveries at the South Platte location. And then again, it's essentially the same water from Strontia that's being released to the South Platte diversion. Finally, I put the 570 last in the list just because, as Marshall indicated, this is Bridgewater. This is temporary water supplies. Dominion does not view this as a permanent water supply. In anything that you see that we put out there, the 570 is never listed as a water supply. Other than that's just the Bridgewater. So it's temporary in nature. Water is currently delivered at the Roxborough location. Deliveries to date vary from 479.2 to a low of 105.6. And why are we taking that water? Because it counts towards our taker pay for the WISE deliveries. And so we colored the water 570 so that we can match or meet that taker pay requirements of WISE. But again, 570, 230, 250 is all the same water from Strontia through the Rampart system. Water deliveries will terminate on the earlier to occur of, and this is straight out of the contract, May 31st of 2028. Date on which Dominion is connected to WISE infrastructure and entitled to take water under the WISE partnership using the WISE infrastructure. And so right now we're on a minimum delivery offer from Aurora on WISE. And the 10-year block is not anticipated to start per the water delivery agreement until the DIA connection is completed. And that effort is being constructed by Denver Water. So that is not part of Dominion's, while we pay for it, it's not part of our project management. The other termination clause is date on which Dominion has obtained a replacement supply in an amount no less than 570 acre feet per year and takes delivery of the replacement supply to Sterling Ranch. So this is a table that just summarizes, starting in 2018, the different colors of water, if you will. And I can provide this information to the group so that you can actually see it. But you'll notice that the 230, 250, and 570, the amounts of deliveries vary year over year. The other thing I want to point out that's really interesting in this and kind of highlights also some of the inconsistencies and the need to get these amendments modified is that you'll note that, like in 2022, the Aurora 230 total deliveries was 257 acre feet. It doesn't mean that we took more than what we were supposed to. The 230 is actually on a water year, not a calendar year. And so when you go from January to December and sum up all the water that was taken under the 230, it becomes more than 230, but the accounting period, it equaled that 230 acre feet. We wanted to compare apples to apples because the 250 is a calendar year water accounting delivery agreement, as is the 570. And so that's why we wanted to show that. But in case you see that, it was something I noted, and I wanted to point that out. And then
can I ask a question on this graph? On this chart, the projections that you have, what is that based on?
So that's based on demand growth in Sterling Ranch.
So the number of homes?
A number of homes, and we offset that by when we anticipate those homes, between entitlement and then construction and getting a certificate of occupancy and actually having a homeowner in, we've been able to dial in how that occurs. And so we have very detailed projections on when we need water demands. So that's, and thank you, that was what I was going to go to next. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. And so the blue highlight represents the projected water supplies, again, based on the growth and development within the Sterling Ranch community and how we're anticipating to color those water supplies as we move forward. And I did bold in 2026 is when we're anticipating that DIA connection will be completed. Again, that project is being managed by Denver Water. And at that time, then the 10-year block that is included within the WDA will start, and more water supply will come through the system based on the Aurora offer. This is just another way to look at the water colors from a month-to-month basis, and this is on an MGD total. So the orange represents Aurora 230. The blue represents Aurora 570, and the gray represents Aurora 250. And so you can see kind of that typical diurnal curve as we, have the summer months in the middle. Those are the higher water deliveries. And then the winter months on the lower end is our lower deliveries. But you can see that the maximum amount of water per month that has gone through the Rampart system was 0.81 million gallons a day. And then this graph is really hard to see because this is really how much water we're taking through the Rampart system. It's very low. Again, you see it month to month, starting in 2020 up to today, and then you see that peak of the 0.81 MGD in this time frame here. But again, it's a very small portion of the system. So conditions met by Dominion. Dominion has secured and transferred wholly consumptive water supplies in the amount of 615 acre-feet per year in trade for the Aurora 230 and Aurora 250 contracts, a net gain of 135 acre-feet per year. Dominion has fully signed and executed the WDA with 1,325 acre-feet of water deliveries. Investment to date in WISE infrastructure includes over 18.8 million in core infrastructure, as well as $56.2 million in local infrastructure. So that's a significant investment that Dominion has made. This is just our share in the WISE system, and that includes $40 million for the Eastern Regional Pipeline. Dominion has secured the rights to groundwater at Cherokee Ranch for interruptible WISE deliveries, as well as junior water rights on the South Platte, storage in Chatfield Reservoir, and is securing additional supplies of the design and construction of the Chatfield Basin Water Reclamation Facility to bring those return flows back into our system. This is just a brief update on the South Platte diversion status of where we are. To the right is a draft. The Tetra Tech will kill me. I cut off the draft and I clipped it into the PowerPoint, but just a draft of what we're thinking the diversion structure will look like. We are, as you can see, advancing the design of the South Platte diversion structure. This is critical infrastructure for Dominion. Dominion is finalizing negotiations with Denver Water for easement acquisition. So we do not currently have an easement for this diversion structure, which is one of the pieces and why there is a request to extend out deliveries of the 230 through the Rampart system, just to allow us to be able to finalize those negotiations and work through the permitting process. As I mentioned previously, the diversion structure is needed for 230 and 250 Aurora water deliveries, so for a total of 480 acre-feet. It's needed for junior South Platte rights, which are somewhere from 24 to 537 acre-feet. Obviously, that varies based on this water being in priority. Exchange water from Chatfield Reservoir, which is 500 acre-feet. And then wholly consumable return flows, which is around 1,500 to 2,000 acre-feet. Again, substantial amounts of water that is needed to be taken through that diversion structure. And to highlight again, the uncertainty and timing of permitting requirements with the Corps of Engineers, as well as our newly founded Water Quality Control Commission that is going to start taking, not that the commission's newly founded, but that their role of being a state dredge and fill permitting authority is now been signed. So that's another hurdle that is needed to go through in order to get the diversion structure in place. So with all that, I will finally conclude with our requested amendment. So above the line is what we have sent and to staff to review and to discuss. Below the line just kind of gives you some indication of our thought process behind it. So for the 230 specifically, we've asked to extend delivery from October 2027 to 2035. Open to modifying the water delivery rate. So currently the rate does increase based on rate increases that Aurora adopts. However, we are willing to pay an escalated increase to that to show our good faith and diligence in having the diversion structure designed and completed. We also ensure that both parties benefit. That talks about the rate increase. Sorry. Below the line, so this allows us to continue delivery through the Rampart system until that South Platte diversion is permitted and completed. Dominion, like I mentioned, needs and intends to build the South Platte diversion as soon as possible to secure water deliveries to our retail customer and ensure that growth can continue within Sterling Ranch to meet our IGA commitments with Sterling Ranch as they continue to grow. Also, this time allows us to get through the permitting, as I mentioned. So the 250 request, this is really just a cleanup request. So no extension of time is needed. When you review the 250 agreement, there is not a time element that is part of that agreement. What we're really just trying to do is clean up the language so that we can get the conditions that we've already met, i.e. securing that trade water for Aurora, as well as being part of WISE and a member of the WISE partnership. We can get those cleaned up within that 250. Right now, all we have is a letter signed by Marshall that accepts the water that was treated. The 570, the amendment is we're asking for deliveries through the WISE infrastructure. That will require us to connect that infrastructure. So we're asking to take some of the burden off of the Rampart system and have that water delivered through WISE. However, once the system is connected per the terms within the 570, that water goes away. And so we're asking that if we make that connection, we can take that water deliveries through the WISE infrastructure through January of 2028. And that also times well with the DIA connection being completed and the start of the 10-year block being around that 2026, 2027 timeframe. And then this is just a simple thing, as Marshall indicated earlier, we've kind of been in these discussions for some time. And so at that time, we were just asking for open negotiations on the WDA, and that is occurring, and we acknowledge that. So that's all I wanted to say on that specific topic.
The only thing I might add to Andrea's presentation is Dominion is the smallest district in WISE by the number of customers, and it's had to build the most infrastructure. So really these amendments help us bridge the timing gaps that we've had with the amount of infrastructure we've had to build to connect to WISE. Obviously Castle Rock and Parker are substantial. Centennial Water, which is Highlands Ranch, are much larger districts, and we've had to build substantial infrastructure to meet these commitments and be a partner with Aurora. And we're just asking for some leniency on deliveries here for a period of time.
Thanks, Andrea and Brock. Thank you. A question?
Yeah, I know you're going to do kind of a wrap up, but otherwise I'm going to forget everything because this has been like intense.
Or do you want him to wrap up first?
No, I kind of want to ask so I don't forget.
I
mean, it's very complicated, obviously, with the different agreements, but we certainly had timelines on these. And then, of course, amendments to extend time. So, I don't understand why people build where there's no water, but was it originally on well water? Is that what you?
No, so as part of Dominion's service agreement with the county and as part of the entitlement process for Sterling Ranch, we agreed to 70% renewable requirements. So we're the only community within Douglas County that started renewable from the start. So not one drop of groundwater has ever been brought into the community. And so we had to secure all of those renewable water supplies up front in order to allow the entitlement and land use process to go through.
Okay. But Douglas County, I mean, gave those entitlements knowing there's all this complication with even getting water to a community. So why hasn't the diversion structure been built?
Mainly for the reason that I just said, we've had to build the most infrastructure of all the districts that are a partner in WISE to just connect to WISE. And in terms of dollar amount, we have the smallest number of customers.
But it was a requirement. It was a requirement, right? By our agreement.
It was for one of the agreements for the 230. Right.
And the 570.
The 570 is Andrea lists, it expires. That actually we can take WISE deliveries.
But you're not taking them?
Currently, the 570 counts towards our WISE taker pay. So we are taking it. It's just being delivered per the agreement at the Roxborough plant.
Okay. Okay, I thought you were not taking it.
So it's not the Wise water, it's Rampart water counting against the
Oh,
Wise
so they're not taking it.
obligation.
And we pay
So it's a
the
little-
WISE rate for
Right,
it, so it's a higher rate on the 570.
right.
So it counts as WISE water, but it's not.
It's not taking it.
Actually, Wise.
It's not
Wise.
actually Wise water. It's actually our high-quality water.
It's
Right.
part of the Rampart system, yes.
Okay. Let's see if I had another, the agreement that was modified, the 2012 on, no, I forget which one that was.
230.
230, why was that amended?
Because, oh, go ahead.
Good.
At that time, when the agreement was initially contemplated, the Sterling Ranch was in a different state and was going to be building the diversion structure, but as different water supplies came online, as WISE got firmed up and was executed, then that pivoted to be at a later point in time. And so there was an agreement, an amendment made with Aurora such that we could utilize Aurora's infrastructure to convey that water and push out to Brock's Point that investment in the diversion structure so that we could adequately invest our portion of the WISE system. Again, over $60 million invested in WISE to help allow WISE to occur and happen.
Okay, and then my last question, you mentioned needing easements and then the permitting process that you, I guess, now have the permitting process signed?
No, we have
No.
to start that process. So
Oh, you have to start, okay.
Yeah,
So can I
it's a-
ask, why
it's a-
would you not, knowing all this and that you have expirations like hitting you very soon, why would you not have done the easements earlier and anticipated having to have that done, not wait till now, ask for an extension, and then how long is that going to take? Because we know how long easements and permitting all takes. So why was it not done earlier?
So we've been working on the easement negotiations with Denver Water for some time. I've been at Dominion, it'll be 3 years in June, and that was one of the things that I started on the first week, was those negotiations with Denver Water. It's complicated from the standpoint of there are other entities that are involved in the negotiations, but now that we've been able to clean up the other entities that were involved in the negotiations, they're progressing. And we're in the final stages of having that.
Okay, and then all these other Chatfield Reservoir, Reuter Hess, are you able to get water from those entities, Castle Rock or?
So what's interesting about Chatfield Reservoir is that the only entity that can get their water currently out of Chatfield Reservoir is Centennial. So the other water that's being stored in Chatfield Reservoir by Castle Rock, ourselves, and other upstream entities, there's a pump back that is needed and required to pump that water out of Chatfield Reservoir, and a significant amount of pipeline that's needed to convey that water over to Castle Rock and other communities that have storage within Chatfield.
Right.
So that's why we're going to leverage that diversion structure so that we can for paper exchange that water that's in Chatfield up to our diversion structure when it's in priority.
So that's the diversion.
Mhm.
Okay,
And to go back to your earlier question with Denver Water, Dominion acquired Roxborough's old wastewater treatment plant and permit to discharge wastewater at that location on the South Platte River. Denver had granted an easement to Roxborough to discharge wastewater there. As part of the negotiations with Denver, they want to clean up all of those easements and do a holistic discharge and intake easement, which has taken longer to negotiate, particularly in light of the PFAS regulations that have just been adopted. So, I mean, a lot of it has been outside of our control, but to Andrew's point, it hasn't been like we've been sitting here twiddling our thumbs. We've been working on it diligently.
you mentioned the DIA connection, so you're waiting on them to do the connection?
So that's all part of the WISE partnership. So as part of the WISE partnership, there are core infrastructure projects that need to be completed. And those are defined as those infrastructure projects that are part of the water delivery agreement. And in the water delivery agreement, it specifically calls out the DIA connection and that having to be completed in order for the 10-year block that is envisioned within the WDA to be started. And so that has been, again, through a lot of vigorous negotiations that we were not a part of, other than being part of the WISE partnership, that is finally under construction. And that's per the WDA, Denver Water is to construct that infrastructure.
Okay. And then last question right now is, how many homes do you have in Sterling Ranch currently?
We have 2,300 occupied. We will end the year probably closer to 3,000.
And then how many will you project?
We will get to the full 12,050.
How much?
12,050.
12,050. And do you, I mean, is it responsible to be building this many homes without a certainty of water supply?
We have a certainty of water supply.
Not with Aurora.
We do.
Well,
If we
partially
if we build the diversion, we can get our.
through WISE.
No, that's water rights that we traded to the city of Aurora that you are contractually obligated in perpetuity
The
to deliver
230.
on the South Platte River.
On the 230
And
On both of them.
and the 250.
Yes.
Okay, but not the 570.
Yeah. So
Okay.
all we're talking about is there's not an uncertainty on the water supply. There's an uncertainty on the delivery. And so all we're asking for, realistically, is to use the Rampart system for an additional period of time to get our diversion built. So we have a permanent supply. WISE is a perpetual lease. We have firmed WISE through Castle Rock and groundwater, and we have traded the water to make the 480, the 230, and the 250 permanent. And so we have the water. We are now building the infrastructure, and unfortunately, given where we're located and what the county made us do, we've had to build substantially more infrastructure than any other WISE partner to connect to WISE.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Continue, sir.
So a couple things. I wanted to clarify that there are differences of opinion on a couple of points that you just saw in Dominion's presentation. Probably, well, I'll highlight a couple and other people may have a few questions to ask them to clarify some other things. But you saw Andrea talk a couple of times about a net gain of 135 acre feet to Aurora through the 250 and 230 agreements combined. Aurora definitely does not get a benefit of 135 acre feet a year of additional water. The benefit to Dominion in those agreements was that they get certainty in delivery. So they get we're obligated to deliver 230 acre feet and 250 acre feet. As you know, the water yields associated with water rights vary significantly. So there are many years that we don't even yield the volume that we have to deliver. There are other years we will yield a little bit more. But those agreements have obligated, Aurora agreed to use our storage in our system to buffer those lows and highs. And we could, if you're interested, we could quantify, I think, with those water rights, we could quantify what they're actually yielding. John?
Specifically with the 230 agreement, that was a stipulation that Aurora had to deliver a portion of some of our water rights that yielded in the upper South Platte downstream of Metro, actually at the Burlington location, so just upstream of Metro. I think Brighton had acquired those stipulations and Dominion acquired them from Brighton or something like that. But it was for a delivery of a percentage of water that we would have yielded at that downstream location. We did a big analysis and negotiated that on average it would be about 230.
So it's generally a wash. Aurora's perspective is that Dominion benefits significantly more than Aurora benefits. We may get a little bit more water yielding from some of those water rights in some years, but they gained the certainty of delivery and the use of our storage to buffer the lows and the highs. They didn't have to build storage. So huge cost savings to Dominion. We're buffering. It's probably not if any, much additional water that's being yielded from the 250 or the 230 agreements. Even though there are differences of opinion, if you go to different engineers and they look at historical records, there will always be differences of opinion on what theoretical yields could be from a water right. And so that's a challenge we have with any water rights.
Yes, please.
If we have a drought condition,
Yep.
then how do we, are we not would that, if we had a drought condition, would we be able to extract the water that we're supposed to get?
Yeah, good question. So the agreements, and I'd be interested if Andrea and Brock view this differently, but the agreements require that they implement similar conservation measures, but they don't necessarily allow us to cut back on deliveries, is my understanding. So we're still, that's another huge benefit that Dominion had in the original agreements. And if we were to crack those agreements open and look at some of the requests that they have on the table, that there are a few things we would want to put on the table as well and say, hey, if Aurora's using less water,
Right.
and our target is 20% less, we want a relief of some delivery obligation in those drought years to you.
So when we went into the drought restrictions, would we obligate them to go through the same?
They're obligated to have similar conservation measures in place, I believe. Is that how
Our,
you?
our base homes are at, I believe, a much ratcheted version down that you already have for your drought conditions. So every home in Sterling Range goes through, like Marshall's been out.
Yeah.
To see it, every home goes through a design review process.
I mean,
and we limit outdoor.
So the
Yeah.
we don't take a cut on the water though.
Okay.
So they are required to have similar or more restrictive requirements in place.
And we already do.
But how does that affect us in the city of Aurora if our customers have to
Yeah.
pay a rate increase because we're
These
delivering
agreements
water?
don't have any protection for the rates don't increase and the deliveries don't decrease. So
Right.
there's that's an additional benefit to.
So, and that's a problem, I think, for our residents.
Again, if we did open these up, there are a few things, including those points, that we would want to put on the table and say, hey, if we're going to make concessions one way, there would be some other things that we would be interested in as well.
Okay.
And that is one thing that we would be interested in, is if we're reducing water use regardless of the starting point or increasing cost to our customers, how do we do something similar? I don't know what it would look like exactly that would be agreeable, but it seems like either reducing the delivery obligation and or increasing the cost in those years would be appropriate. So very good question. So I talked generally about the water rights. The Red Hill water rights that were acquired by Dominion and transferred to the city associated with the 250 agreement have even more challenges with them. And did you guys want to summarize those at all? Those are very unique water rights that we don't directly gain the yield from. So can you summarize that quickly?
Mary?
Yeah.
Because again, this whole thing is complex from
Very.
just what's in the agreements, and then the surface below the agreements, there's even a ton of additional complexity, including the water rights.
Those were water rights that were acquired by Dominion from a ranch that was not being irrigated, it was not being used. So technically, Aurora was benefiting from downstream diversions from water rights that we had. So you got a ranch up here that would have been flood irrigated, that water would have been used and stuff, there would have been less water in the stream for us to divert from our lower ranch rights. That wasn't happening, they were up for sale. They're only decreed for irrigation on the ranch. So somebody could have bought those water rights and irrigated, and that would have conceptually taken water away from some of our water rights. Dominion purchased those, and so since it technically was water we were benefiting from, not because we owned it, right? But it prevented somebody else from taking those water rights,
and
changing
negatively
them,
impacting some of our other.
So we tried to calculate if that water was back in, what is the benefit that we're getting on our other rights over time? And so we, once again, negotiated an amount of water, but it's voodoo math, you know, to figure that out.
So just wanted to clarify that, again, there are some differences in perspective. We aren't gaining, regardless of perspective, we are not gaining a net of 135 acre feet a year from the yield of the water rights that were conveyed to Aurora. Some years we may gain a little more than the 480. Other years we yield a lot less. We view it as generally a wash and that the numbers were fair and accurate, but we do not view that as a net benefit or gain.
I think the intent was just to show these weren't rights that we took from the city of Aurora.
Right.
They were rights that we contributed to the city of Aurora, unlike some of your other service agreements. So,
And they are definitely water rights that were acquired, owned by Dominion, and then conveyed. There's just challenges with water rights, and so wanted to clarify that we don't view that there's a net gain. The other thing where there's a little bit of a difference of opinion, the 230 water, Andrea mentioned the water quality doesn't really change. It comes out of Strontia. The 230 water, that's correct. Water quality would not be different on the 230. There was a note on the slide for the 250 that talked about it's the same water quality. We would probably argue that that's not true as well. If the water's delivered out of Strontia, it is Strontia water, but that agreement contemplates deliveries out of the WISE system, which is a totally different water quality, and would leave the Rampart water, the higher quality water, in our system. So the 250 agreement does have a water quality difference from our perspective.
and our interpretation is that Dominion picks the point of delivery. So there is a difference in
If the turnout, and I think this is what Brock's referring to, if the turnout gets built and they take the water out of the turnout, then the water quality would be the same.
That's what I was assuming when I put that.
So the difference there, so maybe there's not a difference of opinion, just clarification that
It has to be
if the
built.
water's, with the turnout in place, that's true. The water quality would not be much different. It would be essentially the same. If we're delivering through the WISE system, which the agreement gives us the ability to do until that turnout's built, then there's a significant water quality difference. So that's another point of clarification. Those were the things I wanted to just clarify before I got into pros and cons, but I might have missed one or two things.
One that I noticed that I would be interested in seeing the numbers for was the deliveries at Rampart. Maybe I got it wrong. I thought you said that the max that we've seen go to you guys through the Rampart system was 0.8 MGD?
0.81 on a month. That's not the total.
Oh, is that about the average?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, because on a daily basis, it exceeds that quite often.
Okay, so we do think there could be some advantages and disadvantages to the city. Any extension of the 570 water takes additional high quality water out of our system. It was very intentionally cut off at 2028 for a couple of reasons. One, water quality. At the time, we were contemplating salinity challenges in our system. That's been, and Brock mentioned this, PFAS has changed the dynamic for us as well in our system. And so the Rampart water is essentially PFAS free. The WISE water is not PFAS free. So for us, the Rampart water has a huge value in treatment, blending operations. And regardless of, well, 570 acre feet a year is not insignificant, it's not huge, but it is important from a water quality perspective, and that's why the agreement was contemplated ending in 2028. So we would, if we were to open this up, we would have to look at the rate again, because our costs of treatment associated with removal of water from the Rampart system have changed since the agreements were negotiated.
If I
So,
could clarify on particular in the 570, what we're asking for is to be able to connect our Eastern Regional Pipeline to the WISE system and allow deliveries of the 570 water to go through WISE, not Rampart. It would be WISE deliveries that would come through the system. The challenge is in the 570 agreement is that once that pipe is connected, the 570 goes away. So all we're asking for is not an extension in time. We're asking for a change of point of delivery to the date that's within the existing
Yeah, but what is
agreement.
that date?
well,
May
the date's
31st, 2028.
2028, but the
But no,
agreement.
the connection.
the
When is that gonna
connection-
happen?
Yeah, well.
I mean, isn't that what you're asking for? You're asking for,
The connection can happen in a matter of days.
Yeah, they just need to connect one piece
They've built the pipeline, it's not connected, so
because of the agreement.
there's one other, to continue my thought, there's one other piece. In addition to asking for the extension of water deliveries through 2028 through the WISE system, which again, some of this we can work with. There's just certain pieces that are a bigger deal than others. For example, we could look at making some of those deliveries through the WISE system through 2028. But there was another caveat on the 250 agreement. Right now, if that WISE connection gets made, we have the prerogative to deliver the 250 water through the WISE infrastructure. And there was a request in here that we continue that delivery through Rampart, which gets back to the issue that I was pointing out originally. That's a big deal to us. We don't want to deliver any more water than we have to through the Rampart system, which is why the original agreements were drafted and agreed to like they were, so that we could make deliveries through the WISE system. So we might be agreeable, or I think we could negotiate something that extends the 570 agreement deliveries through the WISE system, but it's a bigger deal for us to say we're agreeable to continue delivering the 250 water through the Rampart system. We would want that to shift over to WISE as well, which has been one of the reasons, my understanding is one of the hesitancies to make the connection is because it then gives us the ability to shift where we make deliveries.
We pay delivery rates from Parker, Castle Rock, because our WISE water is wielded through the Parker and Castle Rock system. So
It's the losses, so there's a significant amount of losses through the WISE system that are not contemplated in the 250. And I mean, we would be open to taking 250 deliveries through WISE once that connection is, but we need to figure out the losses. We also need to figure out just the physical ability to send that small amount of flow. It's going to have to carry, right, with other WISE deliveries through the pipeline. And so that's just more of a technical nuance that we need to work through because the infrastructure is so large for
but you
WISE
said
convenience.
you can right now connect to WISE on the, right.
it's just deliveries aren't being made under WISE right now.
That's right.
So like we can connect to it, but Aurora and Denver have not really made substantial deliveries under it today.
So I was curious about that. We've been delivering water all along. Now, it was a little bit less last year because we were talking about we were contemplating drought conditions and stuff like that. The DIA connection is significant because it brings down.
Starts the 10-year block, right? Like, so right now we're kind of in this minimum offer period, right? And I know it's a little higher currently, right? Like than it was last year with the drought conditions. And I think that's, again, it's more of a physical delivery mechanism and not so much like the quantity of water that's being delivered.
Because the flows would be so small to get it all the way around
Correct.
to you guys? Okay.
Correct. So it needs to, because the 250 is not that much water. And so it's gonna have to ride on top of some other water mechanism that's going down that giant pipe, right? Like
Which is why we
it's-
might be willing to look at the 570. Like
right,
they're
so it
requesting.
needs to be
So,
conveyed together, right? Otherwise, it's just not physically gonna get there. That's our concern, is
Right.
And
the
we do-
physical ability to get the water.
And we do have substantial rate considerations wheeling water through Parker and Castle Rock, as well as system losses through those systems as well. So we have to take all that into account. And like, so for example, council members, 570 acre feet plus the 250 delivered through WISE is not actual that amount
Absolutely.
ending up in Dominion. That's mostly, we're losing about 20% going to Castle Rock and Barker systems.
So I have two questions. One is, excuse me, I'm having allergy problems today. You said in your presentation that we could provide the 570 water through the WISE infrastructure and then offset WISE deliveries accordingly. So what is the difference between just shifting over to the WISE deliveries, which was what was intended, and taking the 570 through the WISE
So
infrastructure?
to clarify, that would have to be a negotiation through the WDA on if that's going to count towards the WISE deliveries. I'm just trying to offer a different point of delivery for the 570.
So there would be no offset.
So we agreed, I believe, during the drought conditions, I believe you reached out to us, somebody did, Aurora, and asked us if we would be okay with offsetting the WISE deliveries with the 570. And we talked to the WISE partnership. They were also okay with that. So we agreed to it in that year to help Aurora through that drought period of time. So that was an email, and it was a handshake type friendly agreement that was made, not a permanent change to the WDA or how the WISE deliveries are effectuated.
Well, so this is not my second question, but the WDA, in terms of which entity under South Metro gets what water through the WISE infrastructure, is entirely on your side of the master meter. So we deliver the WISE water to South Metro, and then however it works amongst you all is amongst you all, right? So that's not part of the WDA. The WDA is about what Denver, Aurora, and South Metro are doing, right?
Well, the Dominion agreement is specifically referenced in the WDA.
Only as an alternate delivery point for a specific amount of time, right? According to the Dominion agreements, but that's all it says.
And so as section 5.22 lists other individual agreements between entities with Denver Water and or Aurora. So the WDA did contemplate having other contractual arrangements and agreements within the delivery mechanism.
Well, we can go down that rabbit hole perhaps another time. The WDA says, Dominion agreement, we acknowledge that geographic and considerations and timing of infrastructure construction, Dominion may receive deliveries in an alternate location. Those deliveries are not assignable to any other member. It's basically what it says. What I'm curious about in terms of your part of the rationale for your request to us is that you don't incur system losses and increased fees on the WISE infrastructure side. But those are issues that you negotiated with South Metro and the otherwise parties. And so it sounds a little bit to me like you're trying to say, well, we have these costs that we don't want to incur quite yet. So can we continue to be on Aurora's system so that we don't have to incur those costs yet? But the part of the deal was that when you could be on the WISE system, you would move at least the 570 water to the WISE system.
So again, I think we have to parse out all the different contracts, right? So I guess which particular water supply are
570, that 250.
so the 250, again, we traded the waters to that, and Dominion intends to and will build diversion structure, and we will take our 250 off of the river. That is our intention to do that. And so I know the 250 has those 3 different points of delivery, and different termination clauses are drafted within there. There's a lot of moving pieces when that 250 was negotiated and signed. And so from our perspective, again, because we traded the water and we can agree or disagree on whether there's extra water or not, but if Aurora says it's a wash, it's a wash. And so we're intending to take that water off of the diversion. And so the agreements that were negotiated with Parker and or Castle Rock did not contemplate wheeling the 250 through. to be clear. The 570, I'm just offering an alternative to take the burden off, because I believe what I'm hearing is that there is concern of us conveying and taking up capacity within the Rampart system, and taking away high mountain water quality from your residents. And so to offer a solution, we can take those 570 deliveries, come off of the Rampart system, preserve that 570 acre feet of high mountain water quality to be delivered to your residents by simply allowing us to connect the WISE pipeline and then wheeling that water through there. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for any extension of anything, just being allowed to connect it and wheel
You
the
asked
water.
that the 250 water would, if you make the connection, unless I misunderstood.
And we're offering, again, I believe, I think we're trying to negotiate some.
Okay.
So what I would offer, that we would be open to taking the 250, but I think that went back to Alex's point of, it's shame on us for having not negotiated a better deal with Parker and Castle Rock on the 250. But the reality is that we've never intended to take the 250 through that point of delivery. It was
Even though the agreement said that.
right. I mean,
Right,
that's
okay.
what we intended to take it off of the diversion, but there were different, just like a water rights deal, right? There were different thoughts contemplated in the agreement to allow flexibility for Aurora, allow flexibility for Dominion. I mean, you try to make agreements as robust as you can when you enter into them, right? As just typically what
I will
happens.
say I was the one at the table for the
And I wasn't.
250.
So
And the key point that was critical for Aurora to agree to the 250 agreement was that the water could be delivered through the WISE system. And that was conveyed, not only does it show up in the agreement, it was stated numerous times during the negotiation that that was absolutely Aurora's intent. We absolutely needed to be able to do that. But I appreciate your flexibility and your willingness to look at that.
There's a
reducing our demand on Rampart down to only 230 acre feet, right?
Yep.
Right.
That there would be a makeup of those losses through the Parker, and that's something that we can talk about.
We can talk about that.
But that
That's,
I just want to be clear that that's where I'm coming from.
that's your concern.
Right.
And to Alex's point, we would be concerned shifting that obligation over to Aurora.
Right.
Because it's currently not an obligation we have, even though the ability to deliver water through that system is in the agreement. So we can talk about that. And I want to be respectful of time. I don't have to talk too much more about pros and cons. I think we got most of those out there. Cost would be an issue because our costs are going up, primarily associated with PFAS. And some of the advantages, like you mentioned, WISE WDA is already being renegotiated. And if we could come to agreement on some of these points, maybe we could not have to negotiate anymore, would also be a benefit. We do have one other issue we needed to get out on the table, though. Our rampart lines need easements, and we've been going back and forth on easements probably for the whole time frame we've had these agreements in place. But I wanted to give Sarah some time to talk a little bit about the easements, right, and the needs that we have there. We would like to get those issues resolved as quickly as possible.
Can I make just one quick
yeah.
question? You said you need to be allowed to finish the WISE infrastructure.
Get it.
That's completely on your decision. As I understand it, you've been capable of finishing that for some time and have chosen not to. It's not a permission from us that you need to finish that. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because you used that word allow, if we would allow, so it's not our
Right.
decision.
That
Well,
was confusing.
And I haven't even watched, I don't know if people online
Oh.
have questions either, so.
And nothing in the chat.
No,
so
nothing yet.
Nothing yet? Okay. Sorry.
Well, I think things have been fruitful in this discussion so far, but Sarah, would you like to?
Yeah, and Marshall had mentioned kind of upsizing the pipeline is something that we can do. It is something that we need to do. We've talked about that in the first IWMP, that we need to do that. So as soon as that was done about 7 years ago, we started working on schematic design for where that rampart expansion would go. And we've been working on easement acquisitions for that. Of the 6 different property owners that we've negotiated with, we've successfully negotiated easements for that pipeline expansion, all but the negotiations that we've been having with Sterling Ranch. We've been working really closely with them in terms of alignment of where that pipe can go to make sure that it doesn't disrupt their plans for development as much as possible. We've been working for 4.5 years on those easement acquisitions. We did have an interim negotiation we were working on with Douglas County. They're one of the original owners. We've negotiated with them for several years, and then came to find out just last fall that Sterling Ranch actually purchased that property. So that easement additionally is something that we are in the process or have been negotiating with the CAB and with Sterling Ranch both.
Where it stands that the only holdup is there was an abandoned line that
And I was about to
Aurora
get to that.
had
So
in our property that we agreed to remediate and extract our own costs, and we've done that. And we're
Is
trying
that
to
the
get easement.
Hawking line?
So, and I apologize
There's
if
a
I.
snake line.
Yeah, they call it the snake
Right.
line, and you'll see it referenced there. And I think that's because there literally were snakes living in that, and so
It was an asbestos
it
concrete
adopted the,
line.
that was.
So you've
So
actually
Sterling
removed
Ranch
it?
came
We've
to us.
completely removed it through our property, yes.
So and that pipeline and easement, you'll see that in your backup, does kind of transverse their property that they're planning on developing in the future.
We've agreed.
So they came to the city of Aurora and asked for abandonment of that easement if they would remove that pipeline at their own expense, which they've done. A part of that negotiation was that, yes, we would be willing to do that, but we need an easement that replaces our ability to keep that kind of connection of where that easement was headed, kind of a whole path, if you will. And that's kind of the piece that we're waiting on, which we are requiring as a part of that negotiation. So somehow the negotiations that we've had for the Rampart easement for the last 4.5 years has kind of become entangled with this separate snake line easement issue. The latest offer that's on the table was to allow us to have the Rampart easements to be dedicated in lieu of them having to provide a separate easement that we've been asking for in relation to the snake property, of which we've recently just sent a letter saying no. The cost of the easements, I think, is in the few $100,000 range, and the value of the other snake line easement replacement is more important to the utility.
So it sounds like we could be close to a fair agreement with a little tweaking on each side, perhaps. Is this something we want to,
Well, we don't do it today, right? They
we
go.
would, that's what I'm getting at. We would,
How much longer do you want to sit
we
here?
we could do this within the next month on a certain day or two, or we could continue this to the next meeting, which could take a lot of time.
Yeah.
What do you recommend, guys?
Well, the other thing that probably is mostly my fault that I hadn't really put too much thought in, we do have the new Citizen Water Advisory Commission.
Oh.
That when we repurposed that, we said part of what we may use them for is to help in these kind of extraterritorial negotiations. One thing we could do is route this back there and have.
Oh my God.
Or we don't have to. We could route it there for their thoughts. Maybe what we should do is we could set up some discussions with your team and a small group from staff. Come up, see if we can get all these things resolved something mutually agreeable. Then what we probably need to do is take it to Citizen Water Advisory Committee, explain it so they can weigh in, and then come back
That
here
seems like a logical
to go through the process.
sequence of events, because they would need a lot of input from staff, I'm sure.
Yeah. So if that's agreeable to you guys.
Yeah, that's fine. We can set up some meetings.
Are we looking at the 250 and the 570 all going through WISE? Is that what we're kind of heading towards?
That is definitely the city's preference, yeah. And what I heard initially, the proposal from Dominion is the 570 would go through WISE if we can keep delivering that until the 2028 date. And then I heard a willingness to talk about the 250, even though there's concern about some losses, and so there's probably some discussions.
Yeah, just a negotiation, right, on what that looks like.
Yeah.
Did I hear that Aurora and Denver have not contributed adequately to the WISE water supply?
No.
It's all part of the WDA.
So the WISE, that's a whole other.
Without getting into
How much more time do
okay,
you
yes
have?
or no?
So I'll see if I could summarize without, you guys can weigh in if you.
Anyway, well,
Effectively, Denver hasn't built the
we should.
IA connection,
Okay.
which doesn't trigger Aurora or Denver making substantial deliveries. And so there's too many mouths to feed in Douglas County and Wise right now, and not enough water effectively.
okay.
And
So
there
when
was
you ask about South Metro, Castle Rock and Parker are taking all the Wise water from South Metro today. So we're not getting any of it.
Yeah, so there are the date for the full deliveries on WISE were tied to the completion of the DIA line, which was Aurora's, we were involved in those discussions, but we weren't driving the bus on that one. But anyway.
Well, can we count on y'all to, in the meantime, coordinate and have a couple meetings if necessary, and then we'll get an update in our next policy meeting in a month from now.
You guys meet monthly?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it okay if we move on to the next subject?
Oh, we have another one?
Which is simply miscellaneous matters for consideration, and I think that we have a couple of events coming up, isn't that right, Greg?
Yes. Yes.
What are they?
Festival is on Thursday at Community College.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
At Community College of Aurora.
Yeah, and then on Saturday, we have the Water Wise Expo out at the Municipal Center from 9 to 2.
Thank you very much. Any other miscellaneous matters?
Well, I have a question. Weren't you guys going to give us some talking points for Saturday?
Yeah, we need to get talking
Today
points.
is.
I'll talk to Tim about that because that's in Tim's town.
Okay.
Yeah, before Saturday.
Before
right?
Saturday.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We owe, yes. Because we've got 4 of you queued up, I think.
Okay.
Right? I can't remember what
Councilmember
everybody.
Jurenski.
Right, Jurenski,
Hancock.
the 2 of you.
Okay.
And we owe all of you talking points. So yes, help me remember not to.
So it's not so extemporaneous.
If I.
Or we just
could,
wing it.
Just quickly.
We wing it.
Can I just apologize to Brock? Because I cut him off. I recognize that. I apologize.
Thank you. Thank you for working together, everyone. And our next meeting, Casey, is when?
It's supposed to be June 19th, however, that is Juneteenth, so the city's
Oh.
closed.
Oh.
So we need to reschedule.
a day or two before or after, or the next week? We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, and I'll be in contact with you guys.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for getting together, and thanks for keeping things on track. And there can be some discussion offline, and we look forward to hearing about how this has progressed in our next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.